that the coronavirus doesn't touch.
All seen Black Lives Matter demonstrations.
Oppression is brought out.
So unfortunately, because I just feel like we're going down this road, we've been down this road before.
Like we've had
Hello and welcome to Your Voice. I'm Ted Kofi. The scenes after a block party on the Angeltown estate in Brixton on the 24th of June were described as vile by the Home Secretary. Confrontation broke out between the 100 or so partygoers and police when the latter tried to shut down the event. It led to 22 police injuries and 4 arrests. Now, by contrast, around about the same time, 2,000 Liverpool fans gathered at Anfield to celebrate the end of their club's 30-year league title drought. Also, in Bournemouth, many thousands of sunseekers travelled on the hot weekend, some as much as 6 hours, to hit the beaches and were packed together without any possibility of social distancing. The police did not confront attendants at either of these much bigger events, though the sunseekers came in for some social criticism. The party in Brixton involved mostly black youths. The parties at Anfield and Bournemouth were mostly white events. And the difference in policing strategy begs the question: are black youths policed differently and more harshly than the rest of the population? Now, bearing in mind that there's a large population of under-30s, made in Britain, black men and women who were born here, are British in every way and have nowhere else to go, Your Voice asks what this, together with other indicators of an unequal treatment, says about the future of made in Britain people of African origin. Most importantly, this is your show. Your voice, your shout. So please do get in touch and have your say. Now, first joining me in the studio to unpack this issue is criminologist Torilla Cedrus.
Hi, thank you.
And Femi Okutubo, publisher of the Trumpet Media Group. A real pleasure to have you join us.
Thanks for having me.
Torilla, Femi, very quickly, first of all, in your opinion, are black kids differently policed to the rest of the population?
Of course, I believe that they are, because you can see it in the media, you can see it in how many stop and searches there are on black youths.
Femi?
Sadly, they are. There have been too many examples, and thanks for social media, thanks for media, we see a lot of images, including videos of situations where there is clear discrimination. A group of children out there, probably a mixture of white and black. There was a recent one where the black boy was picked out of a group of 4. It's clearly there.
It's too sad. Well, look, that's your opinion. Earlier on, I spoke to retired police superintendent Leroy Logan and asked for his views on whether he thought youths, black youths, were policed differently and indeed more harshly than the rest of the population. This is what he had to say. Retired Superintendent Logan, you've had a lifetime's experience in the Metropolitan Police. In fact, we understand you'll be writing a book for publication in September this year called Closing Ranks, My Life as a Cop. I really hope you can shed some light on these questions for me. First of all, are young black people policed differently in Britain to the rest of the population?
Absolutely. We found through the work of the Black Police Association, as you know, as a founding member of that, that the type of policing you have in Hackney is not the same that you'll have in Hampstead. The type of policing you have in Brixton is not the same as you have in Belgravia. It's the whole look and feel of policing is heavily impacted by the officers' assumptions and stereotypes of the individuals they'll encounter. Sometimes they get these perceptions long before they even put foot on the borough, because it's something that's passed on by their colleagues saying, oh, can be careful, you know, you're going to be dealing with black men, and they're threatened by them. And until officers have an objective view, regardless of who they're policing, and treat people with the same respect and dignity, then you'll see a consistency in the type of policing that they actually deliver.
But isn't there training to help them deal with the diversity of the audiences they're going to be dealing with, policing?
Absolutely. However, it's the perceptions they get through the operational culture. It shows you how strong the operational culture is about influencing officers' views on the type of people they are serving to protect. Unfortunately, the culture is not being stemmed or reduced by the type of supervision and leadership that senior officers should be giving. And a lot of that culture is fueled by the Police Federation and the police, you know, rank and file, who unfortunately create their own norms and values, which influences the delivery of service on the street. So until you start getting the supervision and leadership to cut this out and to keep the Federation in control, you'll never see that consistency that I speak of.
If this is the really confrontational experience that young black men and women are encountering with the police, what kind of future, in your opinion, do you think there is going to be for Made in Britain? These are British, black children of Caribbean and African origin. What kind of future do they have?
Well, it's not a really positive one that I would think they would have 20 odd years ago. When we had the McPherson inquiry and brought in those recommendations, and we in the Black Police Association really worked hard to ensure that those recommendations were being independently monitored through the Stephen Lawrence Steering Group, and making sure that independent oversight held the Commissioner and all the Chief Constables to account, I thought we would have the type of policing and the service that's critical across the board, regardless of your culture, your background, your gender, etc. And it failed because they took away the independent oversight, and as a result of that, they allowed the Chief Constables to mark their own homework and say all is well in the garden. But the systemic failures are still there externally around stop and search, the excessive use of tasers, the DNA database, the gangs matrix, where black people are on the sharp end of that stick. Internally, black officers are 5 times more likely to be subject to discipline. They're not going through the ranks. In fact, the Met still shows the snowy peak set up with the whites at the upper ranks and the black officers still at the lower rungs. So, you know, those systemic failures are still the same. So what I believe needs to be brought in, bring back the recommendations with the independent oversight, and hopefully we'll start to see the changes that everyone wants to see, because at the moment it's failing. And one of the main reasons for this failure was the austerity, because once austerity kicked in and community cops and safer neighborhood teams were reduced, that's when you saw the disconnect with the black community. And so there's been this barrier. And instead of the police trying to build bridges, they're building barriers.
Superintendent Logan, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
Well, I mean, he doesn't mince his words there, and Superintendent Logan, he literally knows what happens. What was the most pertinent thing that struck you out of his explanation of different policing?
I think it's the long-known fact that there are stereotypes that do exist on the part of police officers. There's bias, there's racism in the system. And I think the other way to look at it is that now leads to a situation where, as they say in physics, for every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So you even have situations where, because people are, you know, they're bottling up a lot of anger, they're not prepared to be cooperative even in simple situations, you find that there's also a reaction from those they're speaking to. So in this case, the community, which sort of escalates the situation.
So it's a spiral. It
It's a
just goes
spiral,
on from one
absolutely.
thing to the next. What struck you, Torilla, from what Superintendent Logan was saying?
I would have to say that it would be the fact that nothing has changed. You know, from with the McPherson report and the McPherson inquiry, the recommendations that have been put in place to try and better the system, nothing has been done to, you know, to implement this. So I think it's just, it really struck me how many years ago that was. I'm not too sure, but you know, that things are still the same in 2020. Surely we should be elevating and increasing the amount of, decreasing the amount of black people that are policed in a violent and
But of course, if you
violent
don't
way.
take action based on recommendations from a report,
Yeah.
you can't expect things to progress.
Exactly.
I think in part 2, which will be coming too soon, we will look at some of the recommendations made by David Lammy in his report commissioned by Prime Minister Cameron when he was in office, and also very little has been done.
Yeah.
What causes this inertia, Femi?
I wish I had the exact answer to that. I think it's the lack of the willpower to actually ensure that there's a change. You see, it's easy for us to focus on the police, but what we must not forget is that the police is only a reflection of the wider society.
Right.
So whether we like it or not, there are problems even as a society, you know, because at the end of the day, policemen are first of all human beings. So if we need to recognize that. And don't forget as well that even the politicians or whoever needs to take those decisions are human beings as well. And I think consciously or subconsciously, you still have quite a number of people who are in positions of influence who are not really ready to see the change that is required.
Excellent. Well, we're going to take a short break now, but please join us again for part 2, where we'll be continuing this conversation. And also, keep your comments coming. See you in a few minutes. Welcome back to Your Voice with me, Ted Kofi, and my guests, Tarilla Cedrus and Femi Okutubo. Now, the Lamy report commissioned by Prime Minister David Cameron, came back with some startling findings. I'll just give you a few and get your reactions. Did you know that 41% of BAME defendants plead not guilty in Crown Court compared to 31% of other ethnic groups? That 19% of young people offending for the first time in 2016 were from BAME backgrounds. That was compared to only 11% in 2006. When it comes to women, 227 BAME women went to prison for drug offences for every 100 white women. So they are 2.27 times as likely to be put in jail for drugs offences as white people. Why this inequality?
It's just hard to even explain, you know. It's deep rooted in the system. The way that we are treated as black people in the criminal justice system is unfair, and I just think it comes down to the perception that we have, or that people have, of black people, and you know, that we're violent, that we're irritable, that we're just good for nothing. You know, it's terrifying, and it's terrible to see those statistics. I mean, the drug offences and the pleading not guilty, it's just terrifying.
Femi?
I would probably have a two-pronged response to that. Mm-hmm. One, starting from self. Mm-hmm. So you have a situation where, because there are inequalities in society, mm-hmm. You find that parents, for example, sometimes have to work a lot more harder. Mm-hmm. So i.e. black parents have to work a lot more harder. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's some deficiencies in terms of supervision of their children. Mm-hmm. Sometimes our children do get onto the wrong side of the law. Mm-hmm. You know, but don't forget that it still boils down to the inequalities in the society. So that's self, you know, as in looking inwards. Now, looking outwards in terms of the wider society, mm-hmm. I would say that there are situations, you know, like has already been mentioned, mm-hmm. in terms of those stereotypes, those racisms, mm-hmm. you know, situations where black children are, you know, unfairly discriminated against. Mm-hmm. And I think those are the things that sort of reflect in those figures.
So if these stereotypes are being perpetuated, I mean, Superintendent Logan mentioned them, you have both talked about them, what part do you think the media has to play in this situation? Tarilla?
They're fueling it. They're fueling the stereotypes. You can see it in the way that the Brixton riots the Brixton party was broadcasted. Like you said in the beginning, it was described as vile, it's described as unacceptable. But when you know, people are going to the beach, it's not really seen as anything. It's just like, oh no, they're breaking lockdown rules. But there was no police there telling them to go home. So the media, the way that they show how black crime is portrayed is just unacceptable.
How do you think this makes young black Brits feel? I mean, we'll come to that further in a discussion in part 2. But if they're seeing these images of themselves in the media, how do you think, Femi, it would make them feel?
I think it's mixed. Mixed in the sense that I believe that, number one, they're not happy with the way they're being portrayed. Mm-hmm. And it's so clear when you see situations whereby it seems to be one law for some, mm-hmm. and another law for others. Right. So like this typical scenario of the celebration after the Liverpool match and right. the situation at the beach, mm-hmm. as compared to mm-hmm. what happened in Brixton. Right. And obviously what you have is, you know, youth standing up for themselves, right. because they believe that they're not being treated fairly, right. or that they're already, you know, there's some anger that's already been sort right. of built into them. Right. So I think, you know, that in itself right. Doesn't help. I think the other point I also want to emphasize on is the fact that thanks to social media, mm-hmm. a lot of those things are now being counteracted. Right. You know, trying to sort of balance things out a bit. Right. And a classic example is, even, you know, without dwelling too much into it, what happened with George Floyd?
Absolutely.
You know, if it was not for those private cameras out there, we probably would not have known what's happened. And there's a lot of it happening even here in Britain. I gave the example earlier on of a youth that was stopped from, you know, from a group of 4 or 5 who was singled out. Thanks for cameras that brought that to life. And then loads of, you know, similar examples along those lines.
So what's interesting is that at the time of the 2011 census, did you realize that 46.8% of black people were born in the United Kingdom? Now, I mean, let's just get that to sink in for a moment. These people were born here. They may know about Africa, they may know about the Caribbean, but they don't understand it at all. They have nowhere to go. I could go back to Africa tomorrow. I speak 4 languages. These people only speak English. How, given that context, do you think that makes them react to these pressures they're being put under?
From what you just described is exactly me. I'm born here. I don't speak a word of my native language. I have nowhere else to go. So for me, the way that we're treated in society is heartbreaking. Honestly, sometimes I just feel like I don't even know what I can do to combat it. But I have to remind myself that, you know, that I'm still strong and I'm still able to get to where I need to be, regardless of the prejudices against me, regardless of the system being against me as a black woman. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people that, like me, that feel the same way. Like you said, I have nowhere else to go. Like, the system needs to be able to give me opportunities and work in my favor. You know, I'm giving into the society right now. I'm working, I'm paying my taxes, but I'm not getting enough back.
Femi, if I may go cut to something else. She said something about being strong. Now, it is well known that the nature of your family background can give you this kind of inner strength, if you have it. And yet, there are more black households headed by single women than for any other ethnic group in the United Kingdom. What part do you think family breakdown causes in this? Is the family breakdown the cause of this differential treatment by society, or the result of it?
I wouldn't say it is the cause, because I don't believe that it's just you know, blacks that sort of have those issues in terms of family breakdown. I think what we're seeing is a situation where a lot of our younger ones have seen their parents, you know, discriminated against. They've seen situations where their parents have not been treated fairly. They've grown up in a society where they believe that things need to be, you know, need to be right. They need to be equal. They've seen that there's nothing different from that other person down there. Sometimes they're even better, whether it's in terms of academic achievements or whatever it might be. And a lot of them feel that, well, we all have a right in this country. We all have the same rights in this society, and therefore it's important that nobody should be treated in an equal fashion to them. And I think that's what brings out that kind of reaction.
Good. Let me ask you this. Now, let's see if we can find a positive end to this thing. What do you think people like yourself, Tarilla, made in Britain, somebody made a joke earlier of you're the MIBs, you know, not the Men in Black, but the Made in Britain diasporans. What can you do? What would you advise your friends to do about this situation?
I would advise them to keep going. No matter how many times you get pulled down, job applications are not going through, you're getting interviews, but you're not going through to the next stage, just keep going. It's only a matter of time before, you know, we are recognised for purely based on our talents and our achievements and our education. I would say just keep going. That's one thing that my mother always tells me, always keep going. No matter how many times you have to apply for one specific job, keep going.
Femi, what's your, I mean, you look like a paternal figure. What would your advice be to people who are in this situation?
Keep your head high, be focused, be the best at what you do, and it will come to a point where society has no choice other than to take you as you are. It might be a long journey, but we'll get there.
Very quickly now, we're coming to the end of the section. Do you think British society is going to change? Bear in mind that 6 months ago, none of us would have predicted that Black Lives Matters would be leading demonstrations in 50 countries around the world. Do you think Britain can change?
I do believe that Britain can change. I mean, it's already changing. Society's already, their mindset's already changing. And I think, although there's a lot more to be done, it can be done.
Femi, what's your opinion?
Britain does not have a choice. It has to change. Society is dynamic. It definitely has to change. I would even say, because I've lived in this country now for maybe well over 3 decades, there's definitely been changes from the time my parents were here, some 50 plus years. It's a very slow process, and that, you know, what we're saying is that process needs to be catalyzed. It needs to move a lot faster.
Accelerated.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's the end of part 2. I'd like you to join after the break, when I'll be joined by Bissy Akins and Tim Ogu. And let me take this opportunity to thank Femi and Torilla for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Welcome back. You're watching Your Voice with me, Ted Kofi, and I'm now joined by my guest for the second half, presenter and social entrepreneur Bisi Akins and journalist Tim Ogu. Now, before we head into the main discussion, we asked for the opinions of some of our viewers to whom this discussion is most pertinent. This is a section called My Voice by Lewis and Marlon.
Hi, my name is Marlon Boateng from Pitch Sundays, and this is my voice when it comes to being a promoter during COVID. These are my experiences. So it became quite clear in March that we weren't going to launch our Pitch Sundays summer 2020 events. We usually launch that in April. So we cancelled sort of all of our upcoming events quite quickly. However, we had a getaway to look forward to, which would have been happening in July next week. So we was going to Malta for the first time. But towards the end of May, we understood that wasn't going to happen either. So we cancelled everything and refunded everybody and just kind of put everything on hold just to wait to get the all clear from, Boris. Get it all clear and just make sure that everything was safe before we start planning on going again. However, I have been seeing, the block parties, and we've been seeing the park events and the house parties, etc. However, we still don't really feel safe. I did have a talk with my business partner Akin, and yeah, definitely, we're both on the same side that it's still not really safe to be doing events at the moment. So yeah, it's just about waiting for the all clear before we go again.
Hello, my name is Lewis, and this is my voice when it comes to partying in lockdown. So yeah, my first experience was just the other week at Brixton done like a block party. So yeah, I was with three of my friends, and one of my friends came with their girlfriend. So yeah, we were just partying as you do, just enjoying the sun, like every summer you do. And the police just literally came and just literally said, move now, like was just pushing people, like literally pushing people. Like there was youth there that was about 14 years old that came along, and it was pushing them out the way like they're animals. And the thing is, we would comply if you spoke to us like human beings, but the fact that they came so military was just a shock. Like I can't believe it. Like the stuff that I was seeing, like taking up buttons, taking up all sorts of things, like trying to whack it on people. Like it's just ridiculous. We're just trying to have some fun in the sun. Like every year we do this. Like it's not a new thing. When people party and have barbecues in the park, like maybe their own people's family members, they're okay with it. But when it comes to us having block parties as an issue, we're not here to cause no trouble. We're just here to just have some fun, enjoy the sun, and just be with our loved ones, our friends. We haven't been with each other for like how many months now? I don't think there should be an issue. I just feel like the police just really need to just reevaluate the way they treat us, the way they handle us, and obviously there'll be a better result. Of course, if you speak to us properly and you don't become physical, like you don't need to become physical when it's not needed. It's only when it's compulsory. But if we're literally just walking and you're just pushing someone out of the way, it's literally it's disgusting. It's disgusting behaviour. So yeah, I'm Lewis, and this is my voice when it comes to partying in lockdown.
Bisi, especially with the second experience, does that resonate with you? I mean, what he's saying. What's been your experience of the police, or the experience of close friends of yours with the police?
I personally haven't had any experience or interaction with the police to my own recollection, but even just picking up on what he said about the police treating them less than human,
Yes.
because they were out partying. Fair enough, we're in COVID, we're in Corona, you shouldn't really be out partying. However, I swear a few weeks ago, whenever it was, they were like doing up beach in Bournemouth, and that was allowed to happen. But because it's in
Thousands
Brixton
of people.
and we're in the estate, you're not going to ask us to comply with your instructions. You're just going to like push us out of the way. Of course, we're going to react. In terms of police, my interactions, I've known my young friends, and when I was younger, my friends, to have interactions with them. And growing up in South London, Brixton, very close to Angel Town, Stockwell, I would see the police do stop and searches to anybody and everybody, right? Especially when it was outside Morley's in Brixton.
Well, are you talking about black people and white people?
No, it was black people, right?
Yeah.
And it was black kids. And fair enough, they were doing their jobs, but I felt like it was targeted because I didn't see them stop and search white groups or Asian groups, but it was literally black groups. And I remember one time I was outside my house in the car with a mentor of mine. He's a black guy, got a beard, bald, and we was literally just discussing the final parts of our meeting. And then before I know it, a bully van must have come. The police come on either side of the car.
What?
A bully van.
A police van?
Police van, but the big ones. So not the police car.
Okay.
The big ones. And
Right.
then the policemen came out of the car, they tapped on the window and they was just like, excuse me, sir, what are you doing here? So they were talking to him, even though I was in the car. They took him out of the car, took him to the back of into the back of the van, and then when he came back to me, he was like, oh, someone must have reported that there was a black man sitting in the car, so they had to come and check it. So I'm like, all right, there's a black man sitting in the car outside the house. Do you need to bring the bully van, which is the big van? Do you need to bring that many police officers? No, it's because it was a black man. So fair enough, I haven't had personal interactions with it, but with my close friends and people around me, I know that there's a implicit bias that exists for sure.
Facts.
Tim, what's been your experience or experiences of your friends? We're seeing more and more of this on social media.
Yeah.
But this is your voice. You know,
Yeah.
this is an opportunity for us to air exactly what these issues are. So what's been your experience or those of your friends?
I mean, my personal experience, similar to Bissy, like I've not had a personal encounter with the police where I can say they acted like this or like that. But look, I don't, and in terms of my friends, not that comes to recollection that immediately, but I don't know if they're internalizing this. I don't know if they've gone through stuff and they don't want to talk about it. To be honest, it's not even a conversation I like to have with my friends, because this are the people that, who are you going to call when things go wrong? If you start believing that these people aren't there for you, which unfortunately they prove time and time again, when things go wrong or when a situation arises, you have no one else to call. So I can't sit here and honestly say that nothing has happened to my friends. I can only say that those conversations haven't been had, and probably I should raise them up. I should bring them up with my friends. But it's a fear. It's a fear, especially being a black man in this country, seeing what's happening in the United States, seeing what's happening even here. A parent getting tasered in front of a little kid in a petrol station. I live in front of a petrol station. I saw that video on Twitter during COVID, and I just looked out my window and thought, if that happened in front of my window, it's game on. It's game on from that point. And forget about not even forget about the adult, because he's probably hurt and he has to go through his own trauma. But that kid will forever remember that moment of seeing his dad getting tasered by the man that will also come and help him when he hurts his leg, when his friend is ill, when his mum needs medical assistance. That will stick in your mind.
Yeah.
So, for people of a certain age, you're made in the UK. You're British in every way, except for the visible difference of your colour. At this stage, bearing in mind what's happening all around us, do you still feel accepted as part of Britain? Bissy?
When I hear that question, a number of questions come up, right? Well, first, what is British and what does British look like? If we're going to go to gov.co.uk, right, to be a British citizen, when you're born into the UK, you almost automatically become a British citizen. Yes. And if one of your parents are British citizen when you were born here, you are definitely a British citizen. You can even apply for British citizenship. And then when we look at Britain, there are a number of people, different races, different genders, different everything. We've got white British, black British, Asian British, mixed British, right? So we are definitely British, so why does the colour of my skin beckon any difference, right? And if we're going to go statistically, Britain is made up of, let's say, over 85% white British people, and then the others fill up the rest of the percentage. So we'll have 8% that are Asian, or 3% that are blacks, right? But regardless, we are still British. So I don't really look or seek to be accepted equally because I know I am a British citizen.
You've got nothing to prove.
However,
Good.
there are implicit biases that exist in this society in terms of our ability or the opportunities that we're given in terms of housing, in terms of school, in terms of jobs, in terms of different opportunities that show that, yes, we are not equal and it is not correct.
If you were speaking to Boris Johnson about this matter, Tim, what would you want him to understand about how it feels to be an MIB, made in Britain, person of African origin?
Boja. If I was sitting in front of him, first of all, don't bracket us. Like, it's white and it's them. The BAME tag, unless you're gonna put a W in there somewhere, I don't know, Wayne, whatever you want to call it, don't bracket us. If we're British, then you class me as a black man, or you ask me what I'd like to be classed as, just as if I was in front of an Asian person, or a person of Indian descent, do you want to be known as this or that or whatever. So that would be the first thing. Don't put us in a group. Second of all, I think it's about understanding that to feel British is to, I guess, quote unquote, to what you're saying, is to feel part of a society.
Yes.
In my collective communities that I live in, or whether it's London or where I'm from, Swindon, yeah, I do. It's not like I get active racism every day when I step out the door, but do I feel like the education system's for me? No. Do I feel like the housing system's for me? No. Do I feel as a black man I have the same advantages or same opportunities as my white counterparts have when they go up for jobs or whatever? Even going to the supermarket, do I feel like I'm going to get judged more than them? Yes. And I can tell you that statistically, or from experiences, purely because I know when I walk in or carrying this beautiful, dark, luscious skin that I carry means that I'm going to have to act a certain way in certain places just to make sure I get by. That's facts. And if Bojo was sat in front of me, that's what I'd want him to hear.
Good. Well, that's the end of part 3. Join us after the break, when we'll be coming to the end of our conversation. Today, on what the future is and indeed could be for our Made in Britain children of the diaspora, right here on Your Voice. And keep sending us your comments. Welcome back. You're watching Your Voice with me, Ted Kofi, and my guests, Bissy Akins and Tim Ogu. Before we dive into our final part of chat this week, Bissy has brought with her a clip for us taken from her powerful poem inspired by recent events and the Black Lives Matter movement. It's called I Am Black.
When I'm walking home in a hoodie with Skittles, you're afraid. When I am out for a jog, you're afraid. When I'm out for a drive with my family, you're afraid. When I'm in my own home, you're afraid. When I'm laying on the ground, screaming, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. My stomach hurts, my neck hurts, everything hurts. You're afraid. Day in, day out, you murder me. At night or in broad daylight, you disregard my life. You treat me less than an animal and you get let off. No disciplinary, no conviction, no nothing. If I'm lucky, you might just lose your job. But losing your job is nothing in comparison to the loss of lives of my brothers and sisters. The battle we are fighting in our minds, the pain you have caused in our hearts. It's exhausting. We are tired. We have suffered. We have died. We've done it all. So it's not down to us now. It's down to you. What can you do? Well, if you aren't the you that I've been speaking about, then you need to rise up, speak out, call out and pull up to fight this fight with us. Things won't change until you do.
Wow. What can I say? Bissy, that looks absolutely fantastic. I'm not sure what the scheduling arrangements are going to be, but I know that we're going to be showing the whole tape on Yanga TV at some stage very, very soon. And you made my last but one question really easy. What can you do? Let me start with Bissy. You posed it in the poem.
Firstly, I think the first and foremost, people need to acknowledge that there is systematic, internalized, institutional oppression that exists in this society. First acknowledge it, and then we can affect change. You know, then we need to ask, why does it even exist? And then once you ask those questions, then you can start making the movement and be the change that we want to see.
I'm looking at this now from the standpoint of the assets we own as a people.
As a people?
Yes. What can you, as a made in Britain black person, do about this situation? Hold that thought. I'm going to come back to you. Tim,
Okay.
give me your cue.
First of all, can I say retweet to what Bissy said in that poem?
Yes.
We're tired, and that we're struggling to breathe. And I want to address one thing you just said: assets. That is the one thing we need as people. We need assets. So if you're talking about me personally and my people, if I'm addressing a group of black people, I'm saying empower yourselves and educate yourselves.
Okay.
Educate yourself in terms of your history. You're going to get if you're black and successful, you're going to get politicized whatever you do. It's not your choice. Sorry, especially in the West. So educate yourself in your history and then empower yourself. Get as many assets as you can, whether it's businesses, hair shops. Let's start owning our own hair shops. Let's start having Nigerian restaurants on high streets and roads where we can just go in and pop in and get food, because that's our power. If you look in history, that's how other people or groups of people have come to power, by owning assets, owning streets. Then you build your political muscle by the money you make.
Is it important, this business about recycling the black pound?
recycling the black pound for sure, building our economics, black economics is very, very important, as well as community, having unity within ourselves is all good, being educated, but we need to stand together, we need to educate ourselves, support ourselves, empower ourselves, and then we'll be able to move collective as a collective front. Yeah, we have issues as a people, but so does many other communities. They all have their own issues, but as long as we have that united front, we are educated, we move together, we understand each other, then yeah.
What's your position on single parenthood? Because if you look at the breakdown of the black family, there are so many single parent black families. Without judging anybody, is this important? Is this not a worry? Or is this an issue we need to address?
Of course, it's an issue we need to address within our own community. We always want, as a child, as any child should want and deserve a two-parent home. But we are also human beings. And I say that because every relationship is different. And sometimes it's a communication thing. Sometimes it's things that we've, also as black people, we've experienced a lot in the past that we don't deal with. I don't want to make this just a purely mental health issue, but there are a lot of our parents, our ancestors that didn't deal with stuff in the past that are passed down, and they don't know how to deal with these things. So it's a constant communication and fight.
Can you say more about the mental health issue? I mean, you're an artist, you're often talking, you're actually venting a lot of things professionally because you're an artist that many people keep bottled up. What can you say about mental health?
I think mental health, especially within our community, isn't really spoken on the way that it should be spoken on. And so many things are repressed, suppressed, that we don't even address, from things that have happened centuries and centuries that have been perpetuated on us as a people. And because we don't address it, it comes across in different ways of our actions. So maybe the guy he has to be macho, and if he can't be macho, he just runs away because he can't fulfill the commitment. Or the woman, she has to always stand strong and she's tired and she can't look after the kids well. There's so many things and there's so many ways that it perpetuates out. So mental health is very, very important, and it does have an effect on the way we are as a people, how we move as a people, and how we stand as a people, for sure.
What about communication, frank communication? Because obviously it is by sharing experiences and so on that cohesion and strength is actually gained and built. Do you think as a community we're talking to other people all the time, but do you think as a community, and certainly people in your generation, do you share these experiences enough? Do you talk to each other? Probably not.
It's hard, you know. We're talking about, do you essentially as a black man feel scared to go outside? Do you feel knowledgeable enough to go and handle the world? I'd expect everyone at first answer to be like, yeah, I do. I went to school, I got my education, I did everything I'm asked of. But like the things we're talking about as a community, it's tough to really go beneath the surface. So I think we've got to go, the way I think about this is it takes a community to raise a child, and it takes a community to build up another community. So yeah, I think in our generation we're better than the previous, but are we perfect? No. But as long as we I try and make it a thing to make sure I have that conversation with my friends, and I will going forward, and then I'll try and pass it on to my kids, and I hope that you can go and do better than me, and each one teach one, really.
Yeah. And I would like just to add quickly, I feel like it's very important for us to say that the black experience in this earth is one like no other. Like I don't think anybody else can say they've experienced what black people have experienced, And that also, we've always had to rise up, we've always had to be strong, we've always had to fight through all the chains and break all the shackles, and that actually adds a lot pressure that I can't even comprehend. And that pressure affects our mental, it affects our psyche. Not saying that we can't alleviate from it, but because we've been oppressed from generations, from before my forefathers, that same pressure is on us right now, and it affects us in our psyche. There's so much that's been going on from day dot that still needs to be addressed, and it won't be addressed in this sitting right now or in this conversation right now, but it's important that the conversations continue to happen so change can happen.
That's fantastic. I got to close the show now, but before we go, very quickly, do you have a future in the UK, Tim?
Yeah, I do, but it's two things. Well, actually, I believe I do, but it's two things. It's preparation or reparations. If you're going to send us home, you give me my gold, you give me everything that's in the tape, and you give all my people, and you send us home. Or if you want to keep us here, you prepare for the fact that I'm going to have kids here, they're going to live here, they're going to have kids here, and you're going to have third and fourth, fifth, sixth generation British Nigerians that will look at themselves and go, it's 6 generations before I was linked back to Nigeria, so I'm here. So prepare your education, prepare for us to stay, prepare properly.
Busy?
Yes,
Very quickly.
There's a future here, but for me, Africa is where it's at. I would like people to make Africa an option if they can. I'm Nigerian and I'm looking at ways to invest and build back home and to change the narrative of Africa being a land of poverty, because if Africa was actually a land of poverty, the West wouldn't be stealing our resources the way that they do.
I don't think anybody would be out there
Exactly.
if it was indeed a land of poverty.
And I think it's just important to say that for Black lives to truly matter, Africa must matter. And shout out to Burna Boy for that one there.
Busy. Thank you so much, Tim. Well, that's all we have time for on this edition of Your Voice. Thank you to my guests in this part, Bissy Akins and Tim Ogu, and of course to my earlier guests, Torilla Cedrus and Femi Okutubo. And thank you for watching. I'm Ted Kofi. Please join us again here on Your Voice.
See,
It's unfortunate because I just feel like we're going down this road. We've been down this road before.
Things like we've had